There are some serious allegations that have been made involving Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, currently the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain. And it all started, Chris, as a report from the New York Times that President Trump allegedly tried to get Woody Johnson to try to get the British government to try to steer the British Open to the Trump Turnberry Resort in Scotland.
Right.
And there are a lot of potential disconnects in that stream of the attempt to get from, the president wanting it to it actually happening. I don't know how practical of a project that was. I don't know how much influence Woody Johnson was going to have. I don't know how much influence the British government would have had. I don't know that there's somebody sitting in an office somewhere within the British government who can press a button and make it happen. But that's how it all started. That was the story that emerged on Wednesday. And this sentence appeared near the bottom of the article in the New York Times. There have been complaints that Woody Johnson complimented the appearance of female employees during staff meetings, and after interviewing a candidate for the deputy chief of mission position, he asked a colleague whether the person who was interviewed was Jewish. Now, it was kind of a hard right turn from why they were even there, but it laid the foundation for what came on Thursday. What came on Thursday was a report from CNN that was focused specifically on workplace behavior of Woody Johnson while serving as the U.S. ambassador to the UK. And there are allegations of both racial and sexist comments made by Woody Johnson. Again, these are allegations. CNN cites multiple unnamed sources, and it appears that these allegations were ultimately reported to an inspector general. That's the mechanism within the federal government. Whenever there's some sort of a complaint to be made, an inspector general receives the complaints, investigates as needed. So, this isn't something that was just being presented directly to CNN. There was some internal mechanism that was activated where people made these complaints. And here are the specific complaints that were made. And again, this is all according to CNN. Based upon multiple sources, Woody Johnson made racist generalizations about black men and questioned why the black community celebrates Black History Month. There was a 2018 event for Black History Month. Johnson reportedly, quote, appeared agitated and asked if the audience would be, quote, a whole bunch of black people, end quote. Three unnamed sources told CNN that Johnson, quote, argued that black fathers didn't remain with their families and that was the real challenge. One source told CNN that an official who overheard the comments was stunned and that the incident was documented and reported. Another source said that Woody Johnson has said some pretty sexist, racist things. And also there were allegations of cringeworthy comments made about female employees, about the appearance of female employees. And there's one quote specifically, it was a struggle to get the ambassador on board for an event for International Women's Day, with Johnson asking why he had to do a, quote, feminist event, end quote. That is the gist. That is the extent.
Right.
That is the universe of what's been reported.
Pretty serious.
And pretty serious if true. So I reached out to the league as soon as I saw the CNN report, and the league's comment was, we're aware of the report. We would refer you to the State Department. Well, the State Department has defended Woody Johnson and has essentially, without specifically denying the accuracy of the allegations, has just said he's doing a great job and we stand behind him 100%. I asked the Jets if they had a statement. At the time, they didn't. In the interim, there was a denial from Woody Johnson that was posted on Twitter. And then last evening, late afternoon, early evening, the Jets issued a statement that they're aware of the allegations against Ambassador Johnson, which he specifically denied in the following statement earlier today. They then go on to quote his denial. I have followed the ethical rules and requirements of my office at all time. These false claims of insensitive remarks about race and gender are totally inconsistent with my longstanding record and values. The statement goes on to say that since the Johnson family became aware of the became owners of the New York Jets, the organization has consistently and actively supported, engaged, and encouraged the development of many different social justice, diversity, women's, and inclusion initiatives. So the league didn't issue a denial per se.
No.
The league steered everyone to the State Department, which kind of denied it.
Right.
The Jets have denied it. Woody Johnson has denied it. So I don't know where it goes from here. It's like so many other things today. The allegation comes up.
Yeah.
a statement is issued and then it just kind of goes away. I don't know what happens next, but it was one of the biggest stories of the day, and it's something that at what finally is a fairly slow time in the NFL, although it's the calm before the storm, this kind of hit, and it cries out to be dealt with. Because, again, if the allegations are true, they're extremely serious.
Yeah, they're serious. I mean, and you're hearing it from multiple people and, notable, trustworthy news sources in the New York Times, the CNN. I mean, yeah, this is serious. And I understand the NFL wanted to refer, the media to the State Department because right now they're looking at it like, yes, we know he's an owner of our football team, but he did this on the duty of the State Department. So you should talk to them. This is their issue right now. And, it's troubling. It's troubling because these are powerful people. These are people that run our league and, of course, employ a lot of females and African-American males. And it just leads to an uneasy work environment. And what stinks about that is we're in an uneasy life environment right now in our country with this conversation, too. So it's sensitive. And, of course, we have an administration that is always linked to this type of talk. So I don't know, and I don't mean to go on the political part here, but sorry, politics keep coming to football. Tell them to stay out of football or just tell them to stay on one side. But that to me is the troubling thing. This is just, what is this time, 97,845 that we've heard somebody from this administration, linked allegedly, to racist or just insensitive comments. It bothers me, Mike. It does. I mean, listen, I had a guy that I used to. You had a guy that
I know it does,
okay,
but
right.
None of that matters.
Fine.
None of that matters. What matters is the allegations at hand involving Woody Johnson. It doesn't matter whether the president who appointed him to that position was Republican or Democrat. This needs to be dealt with, and that's my question. What will happen next? Will it just fizzle out like the 15 former female employees who have alleged that they were sexually harassed working for the Washington organization? That hit last Thursday. 1 week ago, the weekend provided a hard reset, and now there's nothing. It's not even discussed. It's not even mentioned. I mean, that's kind of the way things are now. It's like, okay, here's something that happened that if it's true, it's bad. They deny it. And what do we do? Where do we go? And so the question I have is, what will the NFL really do about this? Will the NFL actively investigate this, or will the NFL just say it didn't happen on our watch? And the Fritz Pollard Alliance, which is in place to champion diversity, specifically as it relates to coaching and general manager positions. And the Fritz Pollard Alliance has done some great work over the years, up to and including creating and enforcing the Rooney Rule. There was a statement issued early Thursday morning by the Fritz Pollard Alliance that reads as follows. The Fritz Pollard Alliance is deeply troubled by allegations of insensitive remarks about race and gender made by Jets owner Woody Johnson. Allegations of this nature, if true, are damaging to the social fabric of our country and cannot be tolerated. While only allegations at this point, they are serious. We call on the NFL to carefully monitor the situation and, if the allegations have merit, to take appropriate action and work toward rooting such sentiments from the NFL community. Now, they stop short of saying that if the allegations are true, Woody Johnson should no longer be the owner of the team. And that's a separate issue because the first question is, are they true, and what will the NFL be doing to explore whether or not they are true? And, the contrast here, Chris, when you think about what forced Donald Sterling to sell the LA Clippers several years ago, there was no investigation to be done. He was recorded saying horribly racist things in the privacy of his own home, and that was enough to force him to sell. Here we have statements allegedly made in a public workplace, in government service, by someone who's the owner of an NFL team. The next step, if we're going to do this logically, the next step is to ask what is going to be done to explore and investigate whether or not the statements, the allegations, are true. Or do we just say, the report is what it is, he denies it, and that's that? So I think the Fritz Pollard Alliance, in a tactful way, is trying to agitate for the NFL to investigate this, find out what's there, right? They've investigated air pressure in footballs. They've investigated allegations of bounties. They've investigated bullying situations in Miami. The NFL gets involved and investigates. Now, it'll be interesting to see if the Jets hire their own lawyer to investigate the situation like Daniel Snyder did last week, and the league just says, okay. The league needs to get involved here. That's what the Fritz Pollard Alliance is saying. The league needs to appoint someone to investigate this independently. That's what needs to happen next if they're going to treat this situation the way that we've seen them treat other situations involving players, coaches, and other non-owners.
Well, okay. I mean, you know the CBA and things better than me here, or just the agreements in general, the contracts throughout the NFL. Does the NFL have jurisdiction to kind of like investigate something like this? Does a State Department official or people that might have been witnesses to this, can the NFL have access to those people? That's would be my first question.
The first thing you got to do is try. Right? And at a minimum, you can make Freedom of Information Act requests. There's certain information that you can obtain from the Inspector General that way, I would assume. Now, there are going to be exceptions and limitations, but there are ways for the NFL to try to get information that would otherwise be publicly available. The NFL can talk to Woody Johnson. I mean, look, they bring players in all the time for personal conduct policy investigations.
Yeah.
And they confront them with allegations.
There's different rules.
Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
You asked me a question. Let me finish. And they bring them in, and they sit them down, and they ask them questions, and they assess whether or not they think they're telling the truth. So at a minimum, what you do is you bring Woody Johnson over from Britain, you sit him down in the commissioner's office, you ask him questions like lawyers do all the time, and you have people in the room who observe his demeanor and come to the conclusion as to whether or not he's telling the truth. Now, you may be limited in how much detailed information you can get, but you try to get all that first. Like every lawyer, you want to know the answer to the question before you ask it, but you want to see what he says. Is he truthful? Does he seem truthful? Does he seem contrite if contrition is necessary? Is he going to concede anything along these lines? The point is this. They do it with players all the time. Are they going to do it now that this cloud has been raised over an owner who isn't currently actively running a team but still owns the team? That's the question, and we'll find out whether or not the NFL is going to take action in that regard.
Well, I hope they do. I mean, I hope that, like you're talking about, that they bring him in, talk to him, try to figure out, the story or hear his side of the story. And read body language and things like that. But the true facts of the matter is there's two different sets of rules. It's just that's the unfortunate thing about the NFL. If you got an owner and a player to do the same exact crime or injustice or whatever, the player's going to be reprimanded, more severely than the owner. It's just that's the proof's in the pudding there. And then, okay, yeah, great. I mean, Woody Johnson's not going to admit to any of this, and the NFL brings him over. It's going to be deny. So, yeah, they have a conversation with him. He says, no, I didn't do it. They read his body language. What are they going to go like? We recommend you can't own the team anymore because we read bad body language in that meeting. So, this is another part of, you're right. It's going to get swept under the rug unless some reporter or somebody out there continues to dig and they find out more information. Or maybe this opens the dam of, he's done other things, that are unethical on the job as well, as far as being the ambassador over there and doing those things. I mean, it's one of the two things it looks like. It's either going to disappear or it goes on.
There's another way that this can go. You could have the New York Times, the Washington Post, SI.com, any other major media outlet with the resources and the inclination to do it, to begin talking to former Jets employees to see if they can determine whether or not there were similar statements made while he was running the Jets. Because I think common sense would tell us he just didn't all of a sudden decide to start acting this way in the workplace when he became the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain. That there probably would be a trail of breadcrumbs during the time that he was actively serving as the owner of the Jets. So at least there is some benefit in trying to track down former employees to see if anyone will go on the record or off the record and make these claims. Now, within the not-too-distant past, the NFL has squeezed an owner to sell his team, and that happened when Panthers founder Jerry Richardson, it came out that there were multiple settlement agreements with individuals who had worked for him involving allegations of workplace misconduct made directly at him, where people who had signed non-disclosure agreements breached the agreements and spoke to SI.com, and it was all laid out there, and before you know it, Jerry Richardson's out. And in that case, the NFL did hire an independent or at least as independent as it ever is, an outside lawyer to go in and investigate the situation and make some recommendations. And so I think the precedent's been set. I mean, there is a double standard that we detect from time to time when it comes to players versus non-players, but they did set a precedent with how they handled Jerry Richardson. And at the end of the day, right, but for settlement agreements being signed by the individuals who had complaints against Jerry Richardson, there is an apples-to-apples element to this. It was employees of the Panthers who had complaints about things done and or said by Jerry Richardson in the workplace. Well, now you've got employees of the federal government who have complaints about things that were said by Woody Johnson in the workplace, not the Jets' workplace, but he's the owner of the Jets while he's in this public workplace serving as the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain.
Is that apples to apples, though? I mean, that
it's ultimately, I mean, it's people in the workplace that he's interacting with, that he's saying things around, and now there's no action involved, but there are words that are being complained about, just like there were words from Jerry Richardson that were being complained about. The difference is it's not the Jets' workplace.
Yeah,
that's what the NFL has to get its arms around. And that's the, I mean, how many owners, well, and there are plenty of owners who have other business interests. And I think if you own an NFL team and you are engaged in non-NFL business and you act in a way that undermines your standing as an NFL owner, harms the shield,
it's a privilege.
I think the personal,
and an honor.
Hey, look, let me just say this. The personal conduct policy applies to all players when they aren't at work. So Woody Johnson's not at work for the Jets, but he's engaging in behavior that potentially would trigger the personal conduct policy. So I think that there's enough there. If the NFL wants to do something about it, there's enough there. The question is, do they want to do something about it? Or is it going to be like Washington last week, where you get a couple of statements issued. It's clear that the league's going to defer to the findings of the lawyer hired by Daniel Snyder to investigate Daniel Snyder. Surprise, surprise. What's the end result of that going to be? What is the league going to do here? Is it going to be more like what happened with Jerry Richardson, or is it going to be more like what happened last week with Washington? That's what we have to see.
I think they're going to need more of the NFL before they dive into it. That would just be my, and again, I know nothing here. This is just me as a person who's followed football for a long, long time. I think that they're going to have to be more that comes out before they dive into this. Right now, it's kind of a, he said type of thing, and I don't know if there's enough legitimacy there. And I know they found other people over in the British government who kind of, what do I want to say, agreed or agreed with Woody Johnson too. So there's like both sides there. There's people that, say, yes, Woody Johnson did do these things, but there's also been a few people that have come out and said, no, none of the requests for the Trump at, Scotland Turnberry happened and all that. So I think there's going to have to be more flushed out of the story. I know it doesn't have apples to apples there.
The stuff about the British Open is irrelevant, I think, to this.
Yes,
the bigger
right,
issue
it is.
The comments allegedly made in the workplace. And also, what are the Jets players going to do about this? Because with Donald Sterling, there was kind of a mini revolt from within the organization where the players were saying they weren't going to play for this guy anymore. Jamal Adams is the only guy who has said anything about it. And look, Jamal Adams wants out. He doesn't have the same credibility that other players on the roster would have, because it's well documented he wants to be traded. So if he can agitate for a trade by making a stink here, that he's going to be more inclined to do it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes.
The other 52 guys on the roster, or technically 89 guys on the roster, it'll be interesting to see if they have anything to say, and they're going to be showing up for training camp sooner rather than later. So that will be an interesting facet to monitor, because if the players begin to speak out and if the players express concern, that's going to put pressure on the league to do something more than just, keep your head low, your mouth shut, and wait for it all to go away like everything else tends to do nowadays. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it plays out. I'm going to ask the league at some point today, will there be any investigation? It's one thing to say we're aware of the reports and we refer you to the State Department. It's another thing to say, will we see the league actively investigate this the way that the league investigated when Jerry Richardson was accused of workplace misconduct that ultimately forced him to sell the team. And we're not saying Woody Johnson should have to sell the team. And maybe he won't have to sell the team. Maybe he just never comes back. Maybe Christopher Johnson continues to run the team.
Right.
Who knows? But it's something that at a minimum needs to be addressed beyond here's the allegation, here's the denial, and there's nothing more we can do about it. I think there is more that the NFL can do about it, and we'll keep an eye on what it is that the NFL does.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.